Hey everybody, welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey bestie, hope you're having an amazing day. See what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. On this episode, we're talking with Tarek at Cerkl, and he is an expert on customized employee communication. So much of our employee engagement comes from the experience that they live out every day in our organization. And he has some really great tips on how to customize that communication a little bit better. Stay tuned. Let's learn.
Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
So your company's called Cerkl.
Correct. Yes, that's right.
And you've been kind of described to me as an employee engagement expert. And I was excited to get you on the Ethics Experts because, a lot of the people that we talk to, we're talking about our workplaces. How can we make our workplaces more ethical? And I think that is like a close cousin, or maybe it's it's a critical imperative for that engagement at the employee level. We live in a knowledge work economy. People are their work. These divisions that used to exist between home life and work life, all those things are gone. I'm sure I'm speaking your language, but I just see so many organizations either on like a macro level, or I see leaders on a sort of a micro level really struggle with that engagement piece, because it's not like you can flip a switch. It's more like stoking a fire. You know what I'm saying? It's like this reaction all the time. And it's hard to maintain because it's like a weather pattern that's changing,
I agree. I liken it to health. You can't just snap your fingers and be healthy. It's just got to be part of your DNA. It's got to be part of your lifestyle. It needs to be walking and breathing. That's just how we are. We just think healthy, and engagement is exactly the same way. It just needs to be part of your culture. It's not as though you turn it on, turn it off. It doesn't work like that.
So where did your passion for this come from? I mean, to be running a company on this particular niche, which I think is a super critical point of leverage. How did you get to where you're at?
Great question. It actually started with my kids. They're much older now, but when they were, I guess, elementary school, middle school, I joined the school board. My background is technology. I'm a software engineer, but I love education. It's a great equalizer. So if I can volunteer and give back and help in any way, I will always say yes. So I joined the school board, and quickly I realized that they struggle with too much communication, and it's falling on deaf ears, and it's not relevant. And how do we get more people involved and engaged with our kids' futures in education? So once I realized that this was happening, my career has been based on finding interesting problems. I never think about money. I never think about building a business. I think about how could we use technology to make the world a better place? And this specific use case was, could we use technology to drive engagement between parents, alumni, community members, and what's going on in these schools to deliver better educational outcomes for these kids? And I don't know, Nick, what it was like when you were growing up, but I remember field trips, assemblies, guest speakers, and you never know when one of those moments will drastically change the trajectory of one of those kids. So that's what I was thinking of. How do we get more of that in schools? And then that led me to really analyze what's winning the engagement battle. And that is, none of these will be a surprise. Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify. So I thought, what are they doing that's similar? And what they do that's similar is they make you feel as though Nick is the only shopper, viewer, subscriber, reader that we have. Everything is tailored to you. Where does that come from? There is a war on people's time. Whether we know it or not, might be subconscious for you, but if you think about what you really value in your life, they're all things that save you time. Airbnb, Uber, Netflix, they're all time savers. Taxi, Blockbuster, hotels, come on. We don't have time for this anymore. And so all of these things are congealing into, it's a phrase that I'm stealing, and I don't remember who quoted it, or coined it, we're not in the information age. We are in the attention age.
Yeah.
I
That's the
believe that to
currency.
be true. 100%. And that's a great word I use as well. Currency.
And
Anyway, that's where it all came from.
so you saw this problem. This is sort of an engagement problem. It's sort of a lack of tailoring problem and less than ideal kind of outcomes in the educational space. And then at some point you started looking kind of at businesses. And at some point you said, okay, whatever, this problem exists, not just in the school realm, it exists kind of everywhere. So how did that pivot happen? And what did you learn in that sort of discovery phase when you're like, what is this problem? How are other kind of entities sort of solving this problem? Tell me about that pivot into the workplace.
I would love to tell you, Nick, that this was the plan all along. That would be a big, fat lie. So I'm building this nights and weekends to solve this one specific use case. And once I built this technology, this is, 9 years ago, all based on machine learning and AI. I can't think of another way that we can actually scale engagement without these two technologies. So I build it, I roll it out, I give it away. Any school district that wants to use this, it's free to you. So what happened is a lot of companies started coming to me and saying, could we use this for marketing? Could we tailor what our marketing list is getting? Why are we trying to decide what the newsletter should be for our audience? Why isn't it tailored to them? I said, wow, that's a really good use case. Sure, use it. So then what happened was a large healthcare organization here in Cincinnati came to me and said, we're receiving all of this really tailored communication. We love it. Could we use this same technology with our employees? Could we tailor what each person's getting based on what they need to see and want to see? I said, I have no idea. I don't know anything about internal communication. I don't know anything about employee experience. How do you do it today? And they said, we use Outlook and SharePoint, which blew my mind because it's been the answer for 15 years.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. 96. That's a way better way to say it. It's so 96. So it shocked me that the advancements in experience that we've seen on the consumer side, the marketing side, have not translated to the employee side.
Right.
And so I said, great, let's roll this out. So we tried it with this healthcare organization, 10,000 employees. It was such a huge hit. It massively spiked engagement and it stayed up. It wasn't just a spike, elevated engagement. And they were so shocked by this, like the power of personalization. I invited them to speak at an internal communications conference in New Orleans, and I'll never forget it. And here's why. There's this little 10,000 person regional healthcare organization on stage. And in the audience is Citibank, L'Oreal, Nike, Delta, you name it, some of the biggest brands in the world. And they're all wowed. How did you figure this out? They wouldn't let her get off the stage. It was so many questions. And I'm thinking, how is it that these companies with all these resources and all these employees are still communicating like 96? Because they hadn't put two and two together. What we're doing for the consumer hasn't translated. So that was kind of the pivot point. When I saw their hunger, how did you do this? I was like, that is who our customer should be. That is our market. We are going to modernize the employee experience, and we want it to be the same as the consumer experience.
So what was that person that was on stage speaking, like what were they saying that was so resonant with the audience? Why wouldn't they let her get off stage? What was it sort of specifically that she was saying in terms of like engagement KPIs or something moving that people were like, oh my gosh, what the heck is happening?
Yeah, so they have really hard, healthcare is really hard to reach audience. You've got deskless workers, you've got 24-hour operations, you've got people with patients, nurses, you've got doctors that need specific information, you've got facilities that doesn't care anything about medicine, but they care about what's going on with whatever. How in the world do you engage such a diverse audience? And so with, how we have structured this, it is tailored. It's not even a persona. It is you. You as a neurosurgeon, you need to know X, Y, and Z. You haven't seen it yet anywhere else. Great. Those are your lead stories. By the way, we've also learned what you like. You're into community service and innovation. These are not need to know pieces of content, but you want to know them based on you as a human being. And so think 10,000 employees, there's not one newsletter, there's 10,000 unique newsletters, 10,000 unique experiences when they go to the intranet, it's tailored to you. When they go to Teams, tailored to you. When they get their newsletter, tailored to you. If you've missed something, I remember my employer saying something about tuition reimbursement didn't matter to me 9 months ago, but I'm thinking about going back to school now. Tailored to you. There's a microsite that is built for every single employee, so you can go back and search. Show me everything across all channels having to do with tuition reimbursement or COVID-19 or innovation or health and wellness. I mean, it is down to the individual in the same way Netflix is all about you. That's the experience that we all long for. And I think where we're headed is this will not be optional. As you get younger and younger employees into the workforce, they don't know 96. They don't understand this idea of communicating with just email or forcing people to go to an intranet that looks like it was built on a Craigslist UI. They don't get this, right? So it's not optional. If you really want to engage them,
Yeah, it's table stakes.
Exactly. This is basic blocking and tackling that organizations should be offering to their.
So, I mean, my organization is guilty of what I'm about to say, but it's a little, I'm just being honest. It's a little odd that there's so much effort placed on, how the front yard looks, what I'll say. The front of the house needs to look so nice, so much money is spent in business on that curb appeal, and not a lot of focus is spent on like, how does the vibe inside the house feel?
Mm-hmm.
And at some level, I've always said that like your external brand and your internal brand, those are really two sides of the same coin. They are the same thing. And I think employees who are inside the fold, who are inside the wall, they can see sort of like glaring discrepancies between these two brands, but it is truly one brand. Your brand is just your reputation. Your brand is just what someone can come to expect from you. And we try to affect that brand in the marketplace, in the minds of people that we don't know, that we want to be customers, with nice marketing and all the flashy things and all the personalized, like you said, like the personalized, outreach and stuff like that. And there's not that same, wrong word perhaps, but maybe dramatic, like there's not that same sort of respect given to these other stakeholders that are arguably more important because they're already part of it. They're arguably more important because like you're not going to have a business without employees. No one's going to love your organization if your organization is not full of people who love it first. You know what I'm saying? So like there's this, as transparency has become more a thing, as there's more opportunities for employees to voice their concerns on social media and so forth, this gap or the thickness of the wall between the external brand and the internal brand has all but collapsed. You know what I'm saying? It's one sort of thin membrane now. And I think a lot of organizations, I'm sure that this thing was so resonant because it's a problem that I think a lot of people sort of intellectually recognize, but they don't know how to like bring it down to earth and make those connection points on the employee side so that there's more of a, there's more sort of consistency in terms of the external brand experience and the internal brand experience.
I mean, you're singing my song, my friend. That is exactly right. When I get into kind of these thought exercises around what drives real value, there's a couple of options, right? So it's your product or service, what you're selling, is your customers, or it's your people. And I think it's called the Employee Experience Advantage. I think it's Jacob Morgan. I want to say his name is the author. So he did an analytical study of hundreds of companies around their employee experience. And he found that companies that really value employee experience, they're outperforming their competition. It's like 4-1. They make more revenue, they grow faster, they have better profits, they retain talent longer. So there's real value there. Everything that you're doing is based on how do you treat your people. And so I agree, it's what you do is who you are. How you behave is who you actually are. You can say from a marketing, branding perspective, try to give off this image. And then if that isn't actually what you do internally, it's hollow and people see through that.
Yeah. And, what I found, what I found in my own life and in my own, business is that there is this natural sort of like human desire to put out a facade that you have it all together and you have all the answers, especially like as you get into more of a leadership position. But I have found that like, obviously nobody's perfect. And I've just found that like the people that I work with seem to have a lot more grace for our organization when we're transparent about what problem we're having, how we're trying to figure it out, the fact that we don't have all the answers, but that together we can all figure it out. Like there's so much more grace for discrepancies between the ideal that is sort of purported or like pushed out there in terms of like, these are our values and the actual values that people are living out, right? I mean, I talk about this all the time. There's this like ideal culture, these words on the wall, this ideal experience that we want to push out there because these are kind of aspirational. And then there's some reality that falls short of that at all times. Like there's always a gap between the perfection and the reality. And so I think a lot of leaders are scared to acknowledge that gap because that gap is sort of an admission of like something less than perfection or something less than the ideal. But I've just found that like most people are pretty common sense and they understand that there's always going to be a gap between sort of perfection and reality. And I think what they're looking for is really just like a, maybe like a transparent acknowledgement of that gap and, credible efforts to try to close that gap. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's paradoxical. It's almost like the more real you are, the more grace you end up getting. The more fake you are, the more concerned you have to be with like a foot fault that can, knock the whole house of cards over or something. You know what I mean?
I do. I think where we see this really catch hold is when I don't have to tell you, I don't have to sell you that your employees are important.
Right.
They already believe this. It's the same thing. If I go back to where we started the conversation, you think about health, right? If I've got to convince Nick that staying healthy is going to be good for your longevity, and I've got to sell you on this because you're on a 24-hour Twinkie fast kind of thing, right? This is a huge problem. Where it's really effective is you already believe this and you're looking for ways to do it better.
Yeah.
You're already in this mindset. And that's what we've seen with our customers is 9 times out of 10, they come to us and they're saying, we've heard of you. We believe this is the right thing to do. Show us what the future could look like. And those are my favorite conversations. I'm a technologist. I'm not a salesperson. I love that because it really is an empathy-driven philosophy.
Yeah, and
These
it's also
people
like
have
a
control.
problem-solving philosophy.
Yeah, they know they can be better,
Right?
right? They're always saying we could be better. It's not ego standing in the way of we're the best. We've already got it figured out. No one can tell us how to do it better. It is show me a better way because we believe we should always be thinking about how to improve in this area of our business.
So, you mentioned Netflix before, and Netflix works because it knows your preferences, right? It knows which videos I watch, which ones I thumbs down, whatever. How do you get that sort of like granular, identifying, data around employees in order to inform the configuration or the permutation of the newsletter that is, unique to them?
Yeah. So it's way beyond a newsletter. It's everywhere you go in that organization. There's a personalized news feed created for you in real time. Just like it doesn't matter where you log into Netflix, phone, TV, laptop, the channel is irrelevant. The experience is what counts. Okay. And so when it gets there, so if you switch from your laptop to your phone, your phone, from your TV. Netflix doesn't care. It's saying Nick's back. Where did he leave off? What do we know now about his behavior and his likes and his dislikes? And then it creates that experience for you in real time. We're doing the exact same thing on the employee side. Wherever they go, tailored to you. And how it learns is twofold. One is you can tell it. I really care about volunteering or community service or whatever it is. The other is it's going to learn based on your behavior. So let's say within your organization, there's a message from the CEO. There's open enrollment that starts September 1st, and you've got a new leadership hire. Nick, I don't care what your interests are. You need to know these three things, right? So that's where the organization is controlled, and it's also where it differs greatly from marketing. Who cares that Nick didn't see that there was a 25% off sale this weekend? That's marketing. No one's going to die or lose their job, get in trouble.
It's not mission critical. Yeah.
Right. So this is where this internal communication function, I think, is infinitely more complex than marketing because of this wrinkle. You must know X, Y, and Z. And that could be based on all employees in North America, all employees at a certain level, all employees that were hired in the last 90 days, whatever it is. So we can be very granular about how we target and make sure you're getting the information you need to know. That's first. The second, when we deliver an experience, is recommended for you. This is all based on either what you've told it, just like Netflix when you first log in. It says, hey, what kinds of shows and movies do you like, Nick? You're like, I like black and white subtitled Italian dramas because you want Netflix to think you're cultured. That's what you told it. Your behavior is you're watching Tommy
Adam
Boy.
Sandler movies.
That's right. Yeah. And so Netflix quickly realizes every time I make one of these really cultured recommendations, Nick ignores it. He's all about Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, whatever it is, Step Brothers. Okay. It knows who you are based on how you behave. We do the same thing.
Argue is also culture. You could argue that that's maybe even higher culture in some ways.
Me personally, yes, I would 1,000% agree with that. But that's how it's learning. Everywhere you go, it's saying, hey man, these things are required. What you're
doing. It's pushing something out that it thinks you like. If you don't actually like it based on your behavior, then it notes that and continues with the algo.
Yeah. So for example, let's say, I don't know, there's 6 pieces of content that it's found that match your interests. And when we deliver an experience, it would even tell you this is an 82% match based on your behavior and what you've told us. So that's how it's ranking this want to know information. It's just constantly learning over time. And if your interests change, you don't even have to tell it. Just like Netflix, you don't have to tell it. It's going to learn. Yeah, he doesn't really care about community service anymore. He's really more interested in innovation or health and wellness. Maybe you're on a big health kick. It's January, New Year's resolution. Wow, he's consuming everything to do with health and wellness. Good. That'll be higher priority for you.
And so as the comms team is putting out sort of pieces of content, they're just tagging it with some kind of identifier so that the program can kind of grab these pieces of content and attach it on an individual basis. Is that sort of how it's?
Yeah, if they have a taxonomy, most organizations do. They have a taxonomy that they've developed for their intranet. So they've got different categories that this piece of content could fall into. They're going to tag it in certain ways. But there's also AI that's reading this and saying, you don't have to tag it. We're going to figure out what this is about and match it based on behavior regardless. So they want to, because they want to be within the confines of their taxonomy, they can. If not, the system will do it for them.
So what message do you think this sends to an employee who goes from kind of the 1996 SharePoint methodology, SharePoint Outlook combo to something that's more tailored? Because I would imagine that there's a message being communicated, not just whatever they're seeing on the screen, but there's also a message in terms of like the company's dedication to their experience or something. Like, I'm just trying to kind of deconstruct the impact that this has on the employee, experience, their engagement, and all that.
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question. I think it is more subconscious than anything because the employee, we're not changing the channels. It's still SharePoint. It's still a newsletter. It's still email, Teams, mobile, whatever it is. they don't know that we exist, and that's how we want it.
Yeah.
All they know is that their experience got better. All they know and feel is that this company cares about my time and they're surfacing things that matter to me. And maybe the smart companies that we work with announce this. Hey, we've made an investment in this technology because we care about you as an employee. And we want to unearth and save you time and find the things that matter to you because you as a human matter to us. That's what the smart companies do. But from an employee experience perspective, they don't know why it feels different. It will just feel very different.
And then when, I'm sure you now have, you've moved into, the corporate space now. What are some of the stories that you hear from clients once they kind of get up their J curve? Because I'm sure there's like an implementation and they're starting to, they have to kind of, they have to digest this thing and kind of implement it into their apparatus. But once kind of those wheels catch, what is it like? What does it look like? What do they start to see? What's changing,
There's really two big perspectives where you see change. One is from the communications team itself. So the old way is we got to go and put the same content across each channel. They don't have to do that anymore. They just hit publish one time. We become the traffic cop. When someone comes to that channel, we deliver that experience. So as a communicator, I have less work to do in terms of feeding channels. I can spend more of that time being creative. They get analytics. Hey, do you know your workforce really loves employee spotlights and you're not producing enough content to keep up with demand of what they like? So stop guessing. So we give you real-time analytics across channels. That's probably one of the biggest things we see across companies of all size is they don't have the same level of understanding that marketing does, right? They can say, this is where Nick is in the buying journey. He's consumed whatever. We don't do that with employees. We don't do that internally. They're not looking in aggregate as to what type of content, long form, short form, video, what channels, all of it. So just having more data to make better decisions, that's a big one. This is just with the comms team. Then with the employees themselves, we see the increased productivity. I'm not seeing content. I just saw this. Why are you sending me an email about something I've already engaged with? We see increased engagement because when they receive communication, it's tailored to them. The subject line is tailored to you. The lead story, you're always getting fresh, relevant content, hyper-targeted to just you. So we see massive jumps in engagement across channel because everywhere they go, tailored. Those are probably the biggest outputs once we launch. Yeah.
I mean, it's such a tough thing, because I think, our HR team kind of deals with this as well. Like, I think they put a lot of thought into trying to make sure that the comms they send around are thoughtful and they're not overloading people and they're not, not annoying people. But at the same time, it's like, I need confirmation that this, that this message is delivered and stuff like that. So it's a really hard thing to balance, and then like when you miss it, like you can never kind of get it right because some people are like feel uninformed and then other people are like, why do you keep emailing me this? Do I work for a company of idiots? Like that happens on a subjective level. That kind of erodes people's connection to their company. I mean, it just does. But like, let's say somebody is like, let's say, the average company's laying down and your solution is someone running or sprinting. If somebody's at a smaller company or they don't have the budget or something, what kind of crawl or walk type steps could they make in the absence of an AI tool like yours to start addressing this in some kind of a way?
Yeah. So how we think about it is first kind of targeting, to even have the capacity to target and segment your people. That's going to be light years ahead of kind of everything goes to everyone because people just tune out if that's how you're communicating today. If everything is in the inbox, which is the most congested channel of all time, in your inbox. Fantasy football's in your inbox. Golf this Sunday is in your inbox. Your mom is in your inbox. And so is your CEO. And so is your chief people officer. And so is this thing that you must do.
Right.
It's way too much noise. So if that's how you're communicating today, of course you're going to have low engagement because you're competing.
Yeah, there's
Things
a
get
din of
lost.
battle that you can't rise above, it's too
That's
loud.
right. Yeah. So we think about one segmentation. We built that into broadcast is kind of what we have in market today. So that's the name of Cerkl broadcast. That's the base layer. Is why do you need to go to HR to pull this data? Why are you asking for spreadsheets? Why are you going to IT to build distribution lists? You're the communicator. You should be doing this on your own without handcuffs. I don't know how they got through COVID. You imagine this submitting tickets nonstop? I need a list of everybody that works at this plant second shift because we've got an outbreak. That doesn't exist. IT's now got to prepare that list, wait for them to do it, double check it, then you can hit send. What? So
Yeah,
when you
and then
think
somebody
about
turned over, and then it's not a complete list. I mean, it's 1,000, issues.
yeah, and this is how almost every company operates today. So I think about number one is just the basics. Can you segment and target? Even if you have to go through IT and HR, great. The next level up, the next phase of evolution is you do this yourself. I don't need them. We're sitting on top of all your people data. I decide I want to send something to all employees hired in these 4 states in the last 90 days. You don't need anyone. You should be able to do all of this yourself. Great. Then it's email. I get it. Every company sends email, but you have to have analytics. I mean, this is not optional. I just
Yeah,
talked
how
to a
many are getting
company.
clicked? How many are getting opened? Like, do
I have
you even
no
know if your
idea.
subject lines are working? I mean, it's crazy. There's this muscle built on the outward piece where there's mad analytics around A/B testing between all these little factors in an email because their currency is engagement. But to your point, internally it's engagement as well. And there's not that same sort of lens. There's not that same sort of analytical rigor around optimizing internally as there is out, external.
Yeah, 100%. You have to be able to answer these questions. So we think that obviously the next step is we know you're sending email that will never stop. You need to know how they're performing. You need to know, like, were they even delivered? I mean, this is critical, and most companies can't even answer this question. They just hit send and hope. And when someone comes back and says, I never got it, there's no way for them to check. See, yes, you did. Nick, I see you got it. Monday, 8:07. You opened it
As a matter of
8:08.
fact, you click the link, whatever.
Correct.
It looks like you looked at it on your phone. Whatever.
Yeah. So when you think about compliance, when you think about making sure everyone is included in receiving messages, my gosh, this is again foundational. You have to have analytics. Great. The next piece would be, oh, we've got multiple channels to communicate to our folks. Slack, Teams, intranets, newsletters, mobile app, digital signage, you name it. And what we've seen is every time they add a channel, they're creating what I've heard coined by someone else, channel anxiety. I, as an employee, have to go everywhere to make sure I'm not missing one thing. It is crazy. But that's how these companies, every company almost operates. And so how do you unify that into one experience? How do we make the channel agnostic to the experience? Netflix does not care where you consume it. Why are we forcing employees to Teams, intranet, email? Let them go wherever they would like and deliver a tailored experience for them. That's kind of where you want to get to. But it is definitely, and this is what we do with our customers too, is it's crawl, walk, run. We'll get you there. And it's going to be a process, and it will be a matter of, it's not years, it's months, but we don't recommend starting with omni-channel.
Yeah. And, there's always more you can do. There's always more customization you can do. It's like this, it's like this ideal that you can continue to strive toward probably forever. And I just think I think what you said is important, that like, just because you're not going to sort of teleport to the promised land doesn't mean you shouldn't start that kind of journey, because the incremental moves are going to have an impact. We talk to a lot of ethics, compliance, human resource, employee engagement folks, and particularly around the like code of conduct or like the policy set issue. They run into a similar type of a thing because let's just kind of talk about a compliance person. They have to make sure that all the policies are dialed in across the organization. And many times they have mixed, workers and, manufacturing, office workers, people on the road, whatever. And so they have to, understand this whole umbrella. But I think they sometimes lose some engagement and some credibility with the workforce when, again, imagine you're, seeing a policy book where 50% of the policies don't even apply to you. It's
Yes.
like, I don't need to, why do I need to read a policy about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act when I'm pulling a lever on a manufacturing machine? You know what I'm saying? So
I
like,
do.
and then that same problem happens on the compliance side because then they start to lose credibility. The information is not delivered in sort of a tailored way. So there are some innovations happening. And again, this is, everyone's kind of, whittling away at their own sticks in their own corners of the forest, like the innovations that are happening there are a policy written in, three different ways. A too long didn't read at the top, a couple of bullets here, and then sort of the, an easy to read kind of fifth grade level, and then perhaps the full, legalese below it. But how much better even could that be if these policy books were sort of parsed out and sort of sent only to, you only have to look at like what's germane to your business. And many of those things are going to be sort of tied to the job description that person has. So I'm just saying that's a perhaps type of an example of, a little intentionality on the front end before these communications are sort of distributed, whether it's a policy or if it's a newsletter or whatever, and just doing a little bit of extra thought and maybe you send out 3 policy emails instead of the one, the single monolith where you're dropping a phone book on somebody's desk,
Yes.
But like little things like that, I think can be a baby step toward kind of a fully customized employee experience that feels very custom and feels very bespoke,
Well, I think it's a really interesting time as these things are now converging.
Right.
So what you've got really modern ways to deliver an experience. That's what we do. We think ourselves as the pipes within an organization to deliver an amazing experience. An amazing experience. So take Netflix. Let's go back to that. Great apps, distribution, all of it is fantastic. But if the content stinks, Netflix will be out of business. If you log into Netflix and it's the same 10 things and they're making everybody pick, hey, it's horror movie day. Nick hates horror movies. I'm out. What are you doing? Or I switch from phone to TV and I have to start all over. You don't remember where I left off? I'm out. Right? So, or the movies stink. They just give you horrible content. I'm out. So it is the convergence of great distribution and great content. So how do we free up the communicator to deliver more creative, valuable content? We have to have the analytics and they have to have the time. Those two things go together.
I never thought of that. That's profound. Yeah.
All right. I'm not sure. I feel like my week is good. Someone said something about. I'll take it. Where we are going now is you take this idea of distribution and you marry it with generative AI. So this exact example that you gave, I love so much is, okay, here is the full policy. Now I want a version that I want this to be rewritten at a 5th grade level so I can review it. They need to review everything, of course. Great. Boom. This is a second. Now it's done and you have it. Yeah. Now, if you have targeting, you can say, I want this version to go to this part of my workforce. About
I have a nice example of this policy specific for the manufacturing people or specific for the healthcare people or specific for the sales people, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. You really want digestion. You have to give them content that they can absorb.
Right.
The channel should be irrelevant. Great. We can handle all of that. I think when you start marrying these technologies, the future of employee experience, employee engagement is the combination of these two techs meeting. That is powerful.
The two techs being the marriage of distribution and content with the generative AI.
Great content with great distribution. Yes.
Got you. So where do let's say it's 10 years from now, where do you think, what do you think the employee experience looks like? How do you think that that's changed? I know that's probably a kind of a hard question. But do you think it'll be like a lot more consistent? Do you think there will be a bigger separation between companies who get it and companies who don't? Like, do you think it'll just be kind of an average rising of the tide? And, we'll look back and say, wow, I can't believe, what the employee experience was like 50 years ago. What do you think?
Yeah. I think 10 years it feels like so far away with the way technology is accelerating and advancing. I think 10 years from now it will not be optional. I think 10 years from now, this is probably 1985 or 1990, and someone's saying, what does the workplace look like in 2000?
2000, right?
Everybody's sending email. Back in the day, they would pass around an envelope that you had to sign to say, I read this memo. It's insane, but that's how we used to work. And so, okay, everybody's going to be sending email. I think everyone will be communicating this way. And whether the company believes in it or not, they will have to keep up with their competition, because you will lose talent at alarming rates because they don't want to walk into 1996.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's a crazy time. It just feels like we're at such a pivot point in this whole game, this employee experience game, and our, the state of our workplace game. There have been so many changes over the last, I don't know, call it 5 to 10 years, that this really does seem like a focal point, or like, a precipice. And there's just so many different dynamics that weren't a reality 10 years ago. Like, the ease of changing jobs is higher than it's ever been. Labor mobility is higher than it's ever been. So to your point, the cost of changing a job is way lower. Or, organizations have been conditioned to see 20 different experiences on a resume, and that's not the scarlet letter that it used to be, in our parents' generation or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I guess it's like everything, some people overcorrect, or some people
Mm-hmm.
move too late. But it's absolutely moving. Like, we're definitely just not in a state of stasis by any means,
Yeah. And I see it from a macro level as COVID was a massive accelerant to rethinking kind of the future of work, how all these companies were more productive when people were working from home. So that myth is gone. It's been debunked. All right, so cool. We need to have really cool tech, easy to use tech, stable tech, because people can work from anywhere. And we know that to be true. And that genie's not going back in the bottle. So you've got that. You've got the emergence of Gen AI. I think that is massive and is going to make a big difference on employee experience. And then, really, when you think about kind of the last piece, I think about the changing demographic of people entering your workforce that don't know anything else. That's just what they expect.
Right.
And
it's so big. I mean, because all the other apps, all the other interaction points, to your point, have a level of customization that now is sort of almost turning into table stakes.
Yeah. So I think it's really kind of those three things have hyper accelerated, where I don't think this is going to be 10 years out. I think the laggards, like, if you haven't adopted this in 10 years, you might not be in business. I think it's going to be that important to the future success of these organizations.
Where can people learn some more about you?
Well, if you go to our website, Cerkl, I know I'm not a marketer. Just looking for cool domains, Cerkl. And really, you know what? Because it's based on AI and machine learning, where I was going with that was machine learning is a feedback loop.
Right.
Train it. So that was the idea of Cerkl.
Right.
Communication Cerkl. Exactly. And so that's where Cerkl came from, cerkl.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I love engaging with people on the LinkedIn, as the kids like to say. So people have questions. If they're starting a new role, or they're in a new organization, or they just want to lead with empathy and leave a mark on their organization, they want to make a change. Great. I can walk you through that. I can give you advice. I can help you. I can point you in different directions. So LinkedIn is probably a great place to initiate those conversations.
Very good. This was a lot of fun, man. I appreciate you joining us on the Ethics Experts, and we'll see.
Congrats on the new set. This is awesome.
Thank you.
Nick, it was great.
Glad to break it in with you, man.
Oh my God, it was awesome.